Steven Seagal had faced many dangerous situations in his life, but nothing prepared him for what was about to happen on that quiet, chilly evening. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, leaving a soft orange glow behind the clouds. Steven had gone out for a simple walk to clear his mind, trying to escape the noise of the world for a little while. But destiny had written something else for him that day. As he crossed the nearly empty street, he noticed something unusual, someone moving furtively near the old, abandoned bookstore at the corner. At first, he ignored it. After all, people came and went all the time. But then, he heard it. A soft cry. Almost like a whisper. Weak. Scared. Steven's instincts sharpened instantly. He turned toward the sound and slowly approached the alley beside the bookstore. The air felt different there, heavy, tense. The closer he moved, the clearer the sound became. It wasn't just crying, it was a little girl's voice, trembling, trying not to be heard. Steven took a deep breath and stepped forward. In the dim light, he finally saw her, a small girl, no older than 7, sitting alone on the cold ground with her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her clothes were dusty, her hair messy as if she had run a long distance. She looked up, startled, as soon as she sensed someone near. For a moment, Steven just stood there, stunned. This wasn't a situation he had ever expected to run into. A child, alone, frightened, hiding from something, or someone. Hey, it's okay, he said softly, keeping his voice calm so she wouldn't panic. Are you all right? The girl didn't answer. She simply stared at him with wide eyes full of fear, and something else, relief. Steven crouched down, making sure not to get too close. He gently offered his hand so she could see he meant no harm. What happened? Where are your parents? He asked. Slowly, the girl opened her mouth, but before she could speak, a sudden noise echoed from behind them. A shadow moved. Steven's heartbeat quickened. Someone was watching them. And that's when everything changed. Steven turned his head sharply, eyes narrowing toward the direction of the sound. The little girl instantly grabbed his sleeve, her tiny fingers trembling as she tried to pull herself closer to him. It was clear, she wasn't just scared. She was terrified of whoever was hiding in the shadows. Don't worry, Steven whispered, shifting slightly so he could protect her. No one's going to hurt you. Not while I'm here. But the alley was dead silent again. The shadow had disappeared. Still, Steven knew that whoever was watching them hadn't gone far. Instincts like his didn't lie. He stood up slowly, carrying the girl in his arms because her legs seemed too weak to even stand. She didn't resist. In fact, she clung to him like he was the only safe person she had seen in days. Steven stepped out of the alley and onto the main road. Street lights flickered above them, and the wind blew leaves across the ground. The world felt too empty, almost unnaturally quiet. Steven scanned the surroundings, houses locked, shops closed, roads deserted. But there was an uneasy feeling in the air, as though danger was following just a few steps behind. Listen, he said to the girl, keeping his voice low, you need to tell me your name. For a long moment, she didn't speak. But then, in the softest voice, she said, Anna. Okay, Anna, he replied gently. You're safe now. But why were you hiding? Did someone try to hurt you? Anna shook her head vigorously. No, not hurt, take me. Take you? Steven repeated, eyebrows rising. Who? She pointed back toward the alley with a shaky hand. Them? Steven's jaw tightened. How many? I don't know, she whispered. But they followed me. I ran away. Steven understood enough. Something dangerous was happening here, something involving this child. And if someone was trying to kidnap her, they wouldn't simply give up. They would come back, maybe they were already nearby. He needed to take her somewhere safe. Steven looked up the street and saw a small diner still open at the corner. A warm light glowed from inside. Perfect. He walked briskly toward it, checking behind him every few steps. When he entered the diner, the bell above the door chimed, and the owner, an elderly man with silver hair, looked up from behind the counter. Evening, he said. But when he saw Anna clinging to Steven, his expression shifted to concern. Everything all right? For now, Steven answered. But we might need a private booth. The man nodded immediately. Right this way. Steven settled into a booth near the window, keeping Anna seated beside him. She was shaking, so he wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. The warmth seemed to calm her a little. Anna, Steven said, leaning in gently, I need you to tell me everything. Who were those people? Why were they following you? She took a deep breath, trying to collect her courage. I don't know. I don't know their names, she began. But, they live near our house. I saw them take other kids before. Stephen's eyes widened. Other kids? She nodded. Mom told me never to talk to them. Never to go near them. But today, they came to our house. Mom told me to run, so I did. And your mother? Stephen asked quietly. Anna's eyes filled with tears. They took her. Stephen leaned back, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. This wasn't just some random danger. This was something dark, organized. Something that needed to be stopped. Before he could say more, the diner owner approached with 2 cups of warm cocoa. On the house, he said. Then he lowered his voice. Saw someone pacing outside. Tall guy. Didn't come in. Just keeps looking this way. Stephen nodded, not surprised. They found us. He stood up immediately. Anna, stay close. She grabbed his hand tightly. Stephen walked to the door and peeked outside. Across the street, under a flickering streetlight, a man in a hood was staring directly at the diner. Not moving. Not blinking. Just waiting. Stephen stepped out, closing the door gently behind him. The man took one slow step forward. Stephen didn't speak at first. He just stared. Finally, the man smirked. We just want the girl. Move aside. Stephen smiled coldly. Not happening. The man's smirk vanished. He stepped backward, blending into the shadows before disappearing entirely. Stephen returned inside and hurried Anna out the back door. We can't stay here, he said. They won't stop. But I won't let them touch you. As they walked through the dim back alley, Stephen made a silent promise. He would find Anna's mother. He would uncover who these people were. And he would end this, no matter what it took. Stephen tightened his grip on Anna's hand as they moved deeper into the narrow alley behind the diner. The dim lights cast long shadows on the damp brick walls, and each step echoed faintly, reminding Stephen that they were not alone. Someone was tracking them, staying just far enough behind to remain unseen. Anna whispered, Are they coming again? Yes, Stephen replied quietly, but confidently. And I'll handle them. Just stay close to me. The alley eventually opened into a small back street with old warehouses and abandoned delivery trucks lined along the curb. Stephen scanned both ends of the road, trying to judge which direction offered safety, and which one led straight into danger. Stephen, Anna tugged on his sleeve. He looked down. She pointed toward a large warehouse, its sliding door half open. A faint light flickered inside, like someone was working late, or hiding. Stephen thought for a moment. If the men were following, they might be expecting him to keep running. But this warehouse, it could be a temporary place to regroup, maybe even find something useful. Stay behind me, he told Anna as he stepped inside. The warehouse smelled of machine oil and rust. Old tools hung on the walls, and dusty crates were stacked in uneven piles. Stephen moved silently, scanning every corner, his instincts sharp. Then something metallic clattered in the dark. Anna gasped. Stephen immediately stepped in front of her, ready for anything. But instead of danger, an elderly woman emerged from behind a stack of boxes, hands raised. I'm not here to harm you, she whispered nervously. Stephen narrowed his eyes. Who are you? Why are you hiding? My name is Marla, she said, glancing over her shoulder as though expecting someone to burst in at any moment. And if you're with that girl, then you're in more danger than you realize. Anna peeked from behind Stephen. You know me? Marla nodded. I've seen your mother. She came to us once, desperate for help. Stephen stepped closer, his voice stern but controlled. Where is she now? Marla swallowed. Taken. Just like the others. The others? Stephen repeated. Marla turned and pushed aside a crate revealing a wall covered in photos, children's photos. Boys and girls of different ages. All missing. Anna gasped softly, clutching Stephen's arm. These are the kids who disappeared from my street. Stephen scanned the wall with cold, controlled fury. The photographs weren't just random images. There were notes pinned beside each one, times, places, dates, patterns. Whoever was responsible was organized, calculating, and dangerous. Who are these people? Stephen demanded. Marla shook her head. No one knows exactly. Some call them the collectors. They target children from quiet neighborhoods. Always the ones least likely to be protected, or missed. But why? Stephen asked. Marla hesitated. They sell the children. Move them across borders. It's a dark market, and very hard to fight. Stephen's jaw tightened. They took Anna's mother. Marla's eyes widened. Then you don't have much time. If they've taken her, they'll try to use the girl to force her mother to comply with whatever they want. Anna trembled. Stephen knelt down and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I won't let them take you. And we'll find your mother. That's a promise. Before Marla could say another word, a loud crash echoed from the entrance of the warehouse. Stephen instantly pulled Anna behind a crate. Marla's eyes widened in fear as heavy footsteps entered. A voice boomed through the warehouse, deep and commanding. Stephen Seagal, hand over the girl. Now. Stephen's breath stilled. Whoever this was, he was expecting a fight. Anna's small hand gripped Stephen's tightly. Please, don't let them get me. I won't, he whispered. 3 men entered the warehouse, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing. Their faces were partially covered with black scarf masks. They moved like trained professionals. The leader stepped forward. We don't want a fight. Give us the girl, and this ends clean. Stephen stood up slowly. You made one mistake, he said calmly. The men tensed. Stephen continued, you followed the wrong person. In the blink of an eye, Stephen grabbed a metal pipe lying beside a crate and launched forward. The first attacker swung a baton, but Stephen ducked, swept his leg, and sent him crashing into a stack of boxes. The second man charged with a knife. Stephen twisted his wrist, slammed the man's arm against a pole, and disarmed him in seconds. With a powerful elbow strike, he knocked him unconscious. The third man hesitated, then reached for a radio. Stephen threw the metal pipe. It hit the man squarely in the hand, sending the radio flying across the floor. Silence fell. Anna peeked over the crate, eyes wide with astonishment. Stephen walked toward her calmly. We need to move, he said. They're not done. Not yet. Marla approached, shaking slightly. There's a safe route behind the warehouse, an old service tunnel. It'll lead you out to the main road. Stephen nodded. Thank you. As they hurried toward the tunnel entrance, Anna whispered, Stephen, what will we do now? Stephen looked ahead, his eyes cold and determined. Now, we find your mother. And we end these people for good. But just as they reached the tunnel, a phone inside one of the unconscious men's pockets began ringing. Stephen froze. Anna whispered, who is it? Stephen picked up the phone slowly. A distorted voice on the other end said, Stephen Seagal, if you want the girl's mother alive, come alone. The line cut. Stephen stared ahead, battle ready. This isn't over, he said. It's just beginning. The tunnel Marla mentioned was narrow, damp, and lit only by a single flickering bulb hanging overhead. Stephen walked ahead, his movements silent and controlled, while Anna stayed close behind him, holding the strap of his jacket like a lifeline. Every step they took echoed faintly, reminding Stephen that danger was never far behind. Anna's voice finally broke the silence. Stephen, are we safe here? For now, he said calmly. But they'll keep coming. They want you for a reason. Anna didn't answer, but her shaking hands told Stephen everything he needed to know. She was terrified. At the end of the tunnel, they emerged behind an old bus depot. Rusty buses sat like fossils from another era. The surrounding area was deserted, except for a stray dog digging through trash cans in the distance. Stephen surveyed the space. This will do for now. Anna sat on a concrete block, trying to catch her breath. Her small voice trembled as she spoke. Why are they doing all this? Why me? Stephen crouched to her level. Because your mother tried to protect you. She did everything she could to keep you away from them. How do you know? Because a mother always knows when danger is coming. Anna's eyes watered. I just want her back. You will, Stephen promised. But we have to be smart. Before he could say more, footsteps approached from the far end of the depot. Stephen motioned for Anna to stay hidden. He moved with deliberate silence, positioning himself behind the shell of a dismantled bus. His eyes narrowed as a figure stepped into view. It wasn't one of the masked men. It was a teenage boy, around 15, holding a backpack and breathing heavily like he'd been running for miles. Wait. Don't hurt me, the boy shouted when he spotted Stephen. I saw what happened at the warehouse. I followed you. Stephen stepped out of the shadows. Who are you? My name is Noah, he said, trembling. I know Anna. I live 2 streets away from her house. Anna peeked over the bus frame. Noah? He nodded. I saw you being chased. I tried calling the police but they told me it was a domestic issue. They didn't listen. Stephen exchanged a sharp look with Anna. How much do you know? Noah swallowed. Enough. The men who took her mom, they came around our neighborhood last week. They said they were from some government agency and needed to inspect the area. But it didn't feel right. Stephen's mind began connecting the pieces. A fake agency. Children disappearing. Someone powerful backing these operations. Why did you follow us? Stephen asked. Because they're after me too, Noah whispered. 2 nights ago, someone tried to take my little brother. Anna gasped. Stephen's expression hardened. Did they succeed? No, Noah said. My dad fought them off. But they said they'd come back. They said we couldn't hide forever. Stephen clenched his jaw. Whoever was behind this had grown bold, too bold. Suddenly, Noah reached into his backpack. Stephen tensed, ready to disarm him. No, wait. Noah said quickly. I just want to show you this. He held out a small device. A GPS tracker. I found this under our car, Noah said. And there was another one in Anna's street, on the lamppost. They're tracking kids. Marking their movements. Stephen took the tracker and examined it. It wasn't something amateurs used. It was military-grade tech. These people have resources, he muttered. Money. Power. Connections. Anna looked frightened again. Stephen, if they have all that, how will we stop them? With precision, he said, standing up. And by hitting the center of the operation. This tracker will lead us back to them. Noah's eyes widened. You mean, you're going after them? Alone? Stephen nodded. They asked me to come alone. That means they think they have the upper hand. Don't they? Noah asked quietly. Stephen's response was simple. No. He handed his jacket to Anna. Stay hidden. Stay warm. And stay with Noah. I'll return with your mother. Anna grabbed his wrist tightly. Stephen, what if they hurt you? They won't, he said with a calm confidence that felt unbreakable. I've faced men like them before. He paused. Men who hide behind masks, break when they face someone unafraid. Noah stepped forward. You'll need help. They're armed, dangerous, trained. You can't go alone. Stephen looked him in the eyes. Help me by keeping Anna safe. That's more important than any fight. The boy nodded reluctantly. Stephen turned toward the road, the tracker blinking in his hand, guiding him toward the enemy. But before he took his first step, Anna called out. Stephen, please, come back. He didn't turn around. But he raised one hand. I will. Then he disappeared into the darkness. What Stephen didn't know was that the people listening on the other end of that call already knew he was coming. And they were preparing for him. The road stretched out ahead of Stephen like a dark, endless path, illuminated only by the faint glow of the blinking GPS tracker in his hand. Each pulse of light pointed him toward the source, toward the people who had taken Anna's mother, and who wanted Anna next. The night felt colder now. Heavy. As if the air itself knew a storm was coming. Stephen's footsteps were steady, unhurried. He didn't need speed. He needed focus. His mind replayed every detail, Marla's warnings, the masked men's tactics, the trembling fear in Anna's eyes. Collectors, he muttered under his breath. You've chosen the wrong child, and the wrong man to threaten. After nearly 20 minutes of walking, the tracker began blinking faster. Stephen slowed. He found himself outside an abandoned industrial district, a cluster of old factory buildings, rusted signage, and shattered windows. But one building stood out. A warehouse. Large. Completely dark except for a thin strip of light leaking from a side door. Stephen slipped into the shadows, moving silent as smoke. He approached the building's outer wall and paused, listening. Voices. 3 of them. Boss said he'll bring the girl soon. She better be worth all this trouble. And that Seagal guy. A chuckle. He'll come alone. They always do. Stephen's jaw flexed. They thought he was predictable. They thought they controlled the board. They were wrong. He moved around the back, finding a small service window. With one swift, controlled motion, he pried it open and slipped inside. The interior was massive, rows of crates, old machinery, and a few scattered lights casting long, eerie shadows across the concrete floor. Stephen landed softly behind a stack of metal containers, scanning the area. More voices came from deeper inside. Stephen crept closer until he reached an elevated office space overlooking the warehouse. A warm light glowed behind the glass window. Inside stood a tall man in a gray suit, adjusting his tie as he spoke on a phone. Yes, she's secure. No, he doesn't know. Yes, bring him in once he arrives. A girl's muffled cry echoed from a room behind the office. Anna's mother. Stephen felt a controlled burn of fury ignite in his chest. He moved in. Silent. Precise. Deadly. Down below, the three guards circled lazily, bored and unprepared. Stephen dropped from the shadows like a strike of lightning. His foot connected with the first guard's chest, sending him crashing into a stack of crates. The second swung his weapon wildly, but Stephen deflected the blow, twisted his wrist, and locked his arm behind his back before sweeping his legs and slamming him flat onto the concrete. The third tried to run. Stephen grabbed him by the collar and threw him into a steel pillar. All three were down in under 10 seconds. No wasted movement. No unnecessary violence. Just efficiency. The man in the office heard the commotion and turned sharply, eyes widening when he saw Stephen approaching the stairs. Don't come closer, he yelled, reaching into a drawer. Stephen kept walking. You should have stayed behind your desk. I said stop. The man pulled out a gun, his hand shaking. Stephen didn't stop. You're unarmed, the man stammered. You should pray I stay that way, Stephen growled. With one swift move, Stephen grabbed a metal wrench from a toolbox beside the stairs and hurled it. It struck the man's wrist with a crack, sending the gun sliding across the floor. The man screamed. Stephen entered the office and slammed him against the wall. Where is she? The man trembled. She's in the room, behind the door. Stephen shoved him aside and kicked open the door. Anna's mother was tied to a chair, gagged, her eyes swollen from crying. When she saw Stephen, she gasped with relief. He immediately untied her restraints. Anna, my daughter, did they? She's safe, Stephen said. And waiting for you. The woman burst into quiet sobs, clutching his sleeve. Thank you. God, thank you. Before Stephen could respond, he heard a slow clap behind him. He turned. A tall figure stood at the entrance of the office. Black coat. Gloves. Face hidden behind a mask with silver streaks. You've caused us a great deal of trouble, Mr. Seagal. Stephen positioned himself between the masked man and Anna's mother. And you've caused these families a great deal of pain. The masked man tilted his head. Pain is part of business. We take children no one looks for. No one important ever threatens us. You made a mistake, Stephen said, stepping forward. And what mistake is that? You looked for the wrong child. Anna isn't unprotected. The masked man let out a low laugh. We know exactly who she is. That's the point. Stephen's eyes narrowed. What do you want with her? Her mother was working with us, the man replied. She broke the contract. She ran. And the girl is leverage. Stephen took another step. You won't touch her. Is that so? The man asked, pulling a thin blade from his coat. Then stop me. Stephen's voice dropped to a chilling calm. With pleasure. The masked man lunged. Stephen met him head-on. Their clash sent shockwaves through the office, metal crashing, fists striking, glass shattering. Stephen dodged a swipe of the blade, blocked a punch, and countered with a devastating elbow to the ribs. The masked man stumbled but didn't fall. You're good, he hissed. Stephen stepped in close. You haven't seen anything yet. He disarmed the man with a brutal wrist crank, slammed him onto the desk, and pinned him by the throat. Your operation ends tonight. The man rasped, You can't stop us. Stephen tightened his grip. Watch me. The man's body went limp. Stephen released him and turned to Anna's mother. Let's get you back to your daughter. But as they reached the exit, Stephen's tracker began flashing red. More men. Dozens. Coming fast. Stephen exhaled slowly. It's not over yet. The red blinking light on the tracker grew faster, stronger, almost frantic. Stephen paused at the edge of the warehouse doorway, his eyes narrowing as distant engines roared through the night. Anna's mother trembled behind him. Stephen, what does that mean? It means, he said quietly, sliding into a defensive stance, they're sending everyone they have. From the far end of the industrial yard, a convoy of black SUVs burst through the darkness, headlights slicing through the cold air. Their tires screeched against gravel as they fanned out in a tight formation, surrounding the warehouse like a predatory pack closing in on its prey. Doors flew open. Men in tactical gear poured out. Not 3. Not 5. Dozens. Some carried rifles. Others moved with military precision, wearing communication headsets. This wasn't a gang. This wasn't a random group. This was an organized force. And Stephen stood between them and a terrified woman who only wanted her daughter back. He gently pushed Anna's mother behind a metal pillar. Stay hidden. Don't move unless I tell you. Her voice cracked. Stephen, please be careful. He didn't answer. He stepped forward into the open, his silhouette outlined by the floodlights now shining directly on him. A man with a megaphone stepped out from behind one of the SUVs. His voice boomed through the yard. Stephen Seagal. You have something that belongs to us. Stephen took another step forward, calm and unshaken. You took a mother from her daughter. That ends tonight. The man laughed darkly. You think you can stop us? You're outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. Hand her over, and walk away alive. Stephen adjusted his stance, shoulders rolling back. I don't walk away from innocent people. Another voice shouted from the back. Take him down. The men surged forward in coordinated lines. Stephen moved like lightning. The first attacker swung his weapon, but Stephen grabbed his arm, twisted, and used his momentum to launch him into 2 others, knocking them down like dominoes. He ducked under a rifle butt, swept another man's legs, and delivered a palm strike that sent him crashing into an SUV door. But they kept coming. 5 men rushed him from all sides. Stephen spun, blocked 2 blows, slammed an elbow into a jaw, kicked another man into a crate, and flipped over a third, using his body weight to pull him down. The yard echoed with grunts, metal clanks, and bodies hitting concrete. Still, there were more. Anna's mother watched from behind the pillar, tears running down her face, not from fear, but from awe. Stephen wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for her. For her daughter. For every child stolen by these monsters. Stephen's breathing deepened as he knocked down another wave of attackers. But even he could feel it now, the numbers were too many. One of the men managed to tackle him from behind, but Stephen slammed him into the wall and kept moving. Another swung a baton, but Stephen caught it mid-air, twisted it free, and used it to disarm 2 more. For every one he put down, 2 more stepped forward. Then, a sudden explosion shook the yard. Boom. The SUVs rocked violently as flames burst from the back of the convoy. A large metal gate buckled inward. Someone was coming. Someone unexpected. Stephen narrowed his eyes, ready for another threat, but instead, 3 figures burst through the smoke. Noah. And with him, 2 police officers. Real ones. Local patrol officers, panting from the run, holding flashlights and old revolvers, not enough to match the army assembled, but enough to shift the balance. Noah yelled, Stephen. We tracked your signal. I told them everything. The officer beside him shouted, this operation was under investigation, we didn't have evidence. Until now. The tactical men hesitated. Just for a moment. Stephen didn't. He charged forward with renewed force, catching the enemy off guard. He used the distraction to knock down several more attackers, kicking away a weapon and forcing another to the ground. Noah ran to Anna's mother and helped her toward the police car hidden behind the broken gate. The leader with the megaphone shouted desperately, retreat. Fall back. But Stephen seized him before he could escape. He grabbed the front of his vest, slammed him against the side of a truck, and growled. This ends. Tonight. The man spat on the ground. Kill me if you want. Others will replace me. Stephen tightened his grip. Then I'll take down every last one of them. The man choked as Stephen's hold strengthened. Now tell me where the rest of the children are being held, Stephen demanded. The man's face paled. You're too late. Stephen's fist curled. But before he could strike, the last SUV screeched and sped away with the remaining operatives, disappearing into the night. The yard fell silent. Sirens began echoing in the distance, backup arriving at last. Anna's mother rushed out from behind Noah, tears streaming, and threw her arms around Stephen. Thank you, you saved us. Stephen exhaled slowly, still focused, still alert. This isn't over, he said. They're regrouping. And they still have more children. Noah stepped beside him. What are you going to do now? Stephen looked toward the dark road where the enemies escaped. I'm going to finish what they started. Then he finally allowed himself to breathe, just a little, as Anna's mother whispered. You're our hero, Stephen. If Stephen should continue fighting until every child is rescued, type yes in the comments. And tell me, Would you stand up against danger to protect someone innocent? Stephen stood motionless in the dimly lit hallway, the little girl's tiny hand still wrapped around his thumb. The door had opened only a few inches, but what he saw behind it had frozen him harder than any opponent he had ever faced. In his long career, he had confronted danger, betrayal, and violence, yet nothing compared to the shock waiting on the other side of that door. A pair of exhausted, terrified eyes stared back at him. The woman standing there trembled as if she had forgotten how to breathe. Her hair was messy, her clothes worn, and her face carried the unmistakable marks of sleepless nights and ceaseless worry. Behind her, the apartment was nearly empty, no furniture, no warmth, nothing that resembled a home. "Stephen," she whispered, her voice cracking. He recognized her instantly. The girl's mother. But more than that. She was someone from his past. Not a friend. Not a lover. But someone he had once saved. Years ago, in a corner of Los Angeles most people avoided even in daylight, Stephen had rescued a woman from a brutal situation involving a violent gang. He remembered carrying a terrified young woman out of a dangerous alley, shielding her with his own body as chaos unfolded around them. He had ensured she received help, protection, and a new start. What he did not know, until this moment, was that she had disappeared shortly after, vanishing into another life of struggle, fear, and survival. Now she stood right in front of him again. And the child he had found, the child he had protected, was hers. The woman clutched her chest as if trying to steady her racing heartbeat. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she whispered. "I didn't want her to bother anyone. She just wanted to play." Stephen gently guided the little girl forward. She wasn't bothering anyone. She was alone in the cold. She could have been in danger. The woman broke, silently. Tears streamed down her cheeks, flowing like they'd been waiting years for permission to fall. Stephen stepped into the doorway slowly, cautiously. He could see fear in her posture, fear not of him, but of life itself. Like someone who had been running for so long that even a knock on the door felt like a threat. "Let me help," he said softly. But she shook her head violently. "No. You've done enough for me already. Too much. I can't take anything more from you." Her words stabbed deeper than she realized. Stephen knelt beside the little girl. "Sweetheart, do you want to go inside?" The girl nodded shyly, letting go of his hand only after making sure he wasn't leaving. He wasn't. Not this time. Inside, the apartment revealed more than words ever could. A single blanket spread across the floor. A broken heater in the corner. A half-empty box of cereal. No toys. No lights except the faint flicker of a dim bulb overhead. It wasn't a home. It was a hiding place. The woman wiped her eyes. "I lost everything. I moved from state to state, job to job, hiding from people who still look for me. I didn't want to burden you. You're Steven Seagal. You have a whole life, a world, a name. I'm nothing." Stephen straightened, his voice low but firm. "Don't ever say that again. You're a mother. You're surviving. And that makes you stronger than you think." But she shook her head again. "No. You don't understand. If anyone finds out I'm connected to you, it puts you in danger. It puts her in danger. They will come. They always come." Stephen's jaw tightened. "Let them." She stared at him, stunned. "You don't get it. They're not like normal people." He stepped closer. "Neither am I." For a moment, silence stretched between them, thick, heavy, and full of unspoken truths. The woman sank to the floor, her strength finally giving out. "I didn't want you to ever see my life like this. I didn't want you to think I failed." Stephen crouched beside her. "You didn't fail. You survived. And now, you're not alone." The little girl crawled into her mother's lap, wrapping her arms around her tightly. Stephen watched them, feeling an unexpected ache rise in his chest, one he couldn't quite name. He had rescued people before. He had saved lives. But never had he felt a responsibility like this. Never had fate thrown him back into a story he thought had ended years ago. The woman hesitated before speaking again. "She knows who you are, not because I told her. She found an old picture. She asked questions. I never wanted your name to bring trouble to her life." Stephen looked at the girl, innocent, silent, tired. "What's her name?" The woman whispered, "Lily." Stephen whispered it again under his breath, as if memorizing it. "Lily." Then he looked at her mother. "I'm not walking away. Not this time. Whatever you're running from, whatever danger you think is coming, I will face it with you." Her breath caught. "Why?" Stephen held her gaze with a calm that came from years of facing the impossible. Because I found your daughter alone in the park, he said. And because I made a promise, to protect the innocent. To protect you. The woman's lips trembled. Even if it destroys everything you have. He nodded. Even then. Her next words were barely a whisper, fragile, uncertain, but filled with hope. Then, we need to talk. Because the people looking for us, they've already found this city.